Hello everyone, welcome to this message. So, as our first card today, we get a list of the shadows, and then two cards that I don't think I've ever had in this kind of a combination, which is the Fairy Guide and Sheev the Kruak. So, very interesting. And then, as the overall energy, we get the card of the Fool, and this card that has something to do with the bedroom, right? Which has a fig on it, which makes me think about the Garden of Eden, self consciousness, which is very much connected to that. Perhaps even feelings of guilt, anything to do with the Garden of Eden, pretty much. But it has become a little bit of a card of self consciousness, but of course, it can evolve every single time that we approach the cards. So let's see. So the fool is most definitely not self-conscious, right? So the fool is like someone who doesn't care about other people's judgments of them, who just dares to wear the most fascinating clothes, right? Who dares to like walk like a clown into the outside world, doesn't care what people think, is carrying very little baggage from the past, is most definitely not self-conscious, right? So he's most definitely not living the life, a life that is based in external validation or something. Like he walks his own path and guided by his own wisdom as well, right? So you could see this the fool a little bit as someone who is traveling lightly in life, who is innocent, who has a pure heart, who has an open heart, who is most definitely not caring what other people think of him, and not self-conscious, and like moving forward based on inner wisdom. And also in a very wise manner, right? So he's protected. So, and this is a card of self-consciousness, feelings of guilt, these kinds of things. So, yeah, very interesting. Maybe he is leaving that behind, because you see the fool moving away from that, and also Elizabeth Shadows is also someone who's moving away from a situation, embracing a fresh new slate experience, right? So maybe you are, and also number 44 has to do with being guided by the angels. So it could be that also this sign also has to do with resurrection, rebirth, those kinds of things. So I do think what this wants to say is are um, that you are moving towards a fresh new slate in life, towards a new beginning, which the fool also usually tends to do. So he's moving towards a fresh new slate, a pure slate in life, where you are making yourself into a pure slate, right? So not taking the past with you anymore, getting out of a really dark vibration or a very toxic past, very dark past, and like you're moving away from that towards a fresh new slate, towards purity, towards a fresh pure slate, like you being a fresh pure slate and your life being that probably as well, and like but most definitely you, right? So you're moving towards a life where you don't really care about what other people think. You are guided by your own inner wisdom, and you're moving away from feelings of guilt and feelings of self consciousness as well, right? So you're not really caring about other people's judgments, and you're not carrying them with you into the future either. So let's see. So you're moving away, probably guided by the angels, right? Probably guided by God. You are moving away from a very toxic situation. You're elevating yourself to a fresh new slate, and this also has to do with the lens you look through. So quite possibly you're going to be looking at the world from very pure, innocent, fresh eyes, and that are not taking the past with you. So in the future, you're going to be looking at the world uh, from a fresh new slate kind of place. So you're not taking the baggage of the past judgments. You're not going to be taking that with you anymore. Um, Past anything that was past betrayals, past hurt. You're not taking any of that with you into the future. So that's what this means. And yeah, you're looking from a very very pure lens. That's what I see in that. And this could also be a non-egoic lens. This could be looking through the eyes of God, right? Like looking at the world in a very very beautiful way. And then we have the singer of healing. So you are usually, this is a card of like someone, like it could be God guiding your focus. It could also be something else guiding your focus. So let's see what the next card is. and that is the Death card, and then the Dark Lady. So the end of an oppressive force. So it could also be that God is guiding you away from anything that is oppressive, which could also indicate anything that is oppressive, but um, also anything to do with dark feminine archetypes. So it means usually this is a dark mother figure, feminine archetype, right? The dark mother, pretty much, right? And anything else to do with the dark feminine archetypes that are quite dark and quite toxic, right? So if there it was a dark female in your life, which could be a dark mother figure, then you are temporarily or permanently throwing a like this makes me think about furniture, right? Like ancient, like old furniture that could be antique furniture that you throw a cloth over. This could be for safekeeping and to be revisited in the future for preservation purposes, right? But it could also sometimes just talk about like, let's throw a blanket over it, like this is an ending, right? So maybe you are temporarily focusing in a different direction. Could be that, but we'll have to see. Your focus is most definitely being redirected towards something else. So let's go top to bottom to really see what this is about. So, List of the Shadows is like moving away from a dark situation. It's usually toxic, dark, low vibrational that she's getting the hell away from, right? And God is guiding your focus to get yourself the hell away from that, right? To remove yourself from a toxic situation, from a dark vibrational situation. So that's what this is talking about. And you have angelic help quite possibly in this as well, because number 44 has to do with angelic assistance. So, and then we have the fairy guide. So, this is a fresh new slate in your life, a fresh new page in your life that you're moving towards. So, very interesting, an ending, the card of death, right? An ending and a fresh new slate. So, you are being guided into a fresh new slate, and you're also being guided to end something in terms of ending it because you're no longer focusing on it, which is very similar to um, putting a blanket over a piece of furniture. The furniture is still there, right? But you're not focused on it anymore. So you are focused elsewhere. And that's pretty much what this is. You are focusing elsewhere, and God is guiding your focus towards a fresh new slate in life, which also has to do with no more self consciousness, no longer carrying the past with you, past judgments, anything that is like you're traveling lightly, right? And then we have She of the Kruak, which also has to do with feelings of guilt. Releasing guilt could possibly also have something to do with that. And then we have the Dark Lady and She of the Kruak. So this talks to me about different lenses that you could look through, right? So you have the lens of the egoic mind. You have like you can go further and further back until you reach God, right? So like these are different lenses that you could be looking through. And this could also be the lens of non-personhood as well. So maybe you are going completely back to a non-egoic way of looking at the world, a divine way of looking at the world. Um, um, yeah, a world where you're not really looking through the lens of a persona, perhaps, or you're not really looking through the lens of perhaps even this dark feminine, right? So maybe you're no longer looking at through the lens of a dark mother figure, a dark feminine archetype, an oppressive force, whatever this may be in your life, which could also be a male, of course. So take it as it applies to you, of course. But this could either talk about a dark feminine archetype, which it often does, dark mother figure, or just an an oppressive person in general, or even a situation as well. So an oppressive situation. So there's something about that you're no longer looking through the lens. So you're no longer looking through the perspective of this person. So maybe you have been empathically picking up on this person. If you are an empath, perhaps maybe you have been seeing the world through this person's eyes. So empathically, telepathically picking up on their thoughts. So maybe you have been picking up on empathically, or maybe you have been empathically or telepathically been picking up on someone who is quite toxic and female in gender. So it could be that, or are no longer considering their perspective, perhaps, or the perspective of this dark situation, this oppressive situation, or this oppressive mother figure, this oppressive person. You're no longer looking through their perspective. You're no longer interested in and looking at things from their perspective, which means you have moved on, you're focusing elsewhere. So also, if you may have been thinking about, like, if you are an empath, like, was I picking up on someone because I don't didn't really feel like myself or whatever, then this could be a confirmation for you to say, yes, you have been picking up on a person who is quite dark, who is quite oppressive, who is quite toxic. And this was a female figure, if that would be the case, right? So let's see. So now you get to look through your own lens again, and you can look at the world from a very pure place without judgment, and especially also not from the place of the judgment of this person. So if you have been like, if you have been looking at the world through the judgment of an oppressive situation, from like that you are carrying it with you into the future, right? So like you're no longer going to be looking at the world through the lens of what this person said about you, judged you, how this person made you feel, whatever it may be. Like you're not going to be looking at the world from that perspective anymore, which is really beautiful. And then at the bottom, the like the underlying energy really, because the bottom of the deck is our other cards. We have the fairy who was kissed by the pixies, the two of wands, which has to do with the future, and a homework balance picnic. So let's just see. So this card in and of itself talks to me about like when you are done working, you go and relax. So, and this is a card that usually talks to me about complaining about the state of affairs, the state of the world, the state of the situation that you find yourself in, while you're actually at the same time being cherished by God, being loved by God, being cherished by people, being loved by people. So, but at the same time, you are complaining about situations you were in. So there was a part of this situation that was a reason to complain, you could say. Although you were blessed, there was also reason to complain. Or although you were being loved by people or cherished by people or loved by God, um, even if you had luck, for example, as well, because it can sometimes talk about being at the right place at the right time, which I don't really feel right now. But at the same time, like there was a reason to complain about something, and now you get to have a life may become a picnic right now. So maybe moving forward, life will become a picnic, which is like a way of saying it, right? Like it will be like life will become a picnic for you. So it could be quite enjoyable. Not really that much to complain about, feeling much more blessed than reason to complain about something. Maybe there could also be moments to relax after work. So it could talk about all of these things, of course. So let's see. And at the bottom of the deck, so like what's lying underneath, we get neighbors and tradition. So this usually talks about like it is related to a memory where my neighbor used to like kindly bring like the neighbor at our parents' house, right? Used to nicely bring vegetables, but it was always with an ulterior motive to get the latest gossip, right? So it could be that you have been dealing with people who had ulterior motives, perhaps, or who were seeking to get the latest gossip out of you, perhaps. It could be fake kindness. It could even be people who are um, can be kind, but also can be quite mean at the same time as well. So you don't really know what side you're going to be getting. So it could be that as well. So yeah. So let's see. And then we have the water lantern, and interestingly enough, the Ace of Cups. So the Ace of Cups is can talk about self care, about investing in yourself, doing self care. And this could also be investing money into yourself. So, investing money in your business, investing money into yourself or the improvement of your situation, investing money in terms of you being able to take better care of yourself, or just literally taking better care of yourself, loving yourself, these kinds of things. And the water lantern is very interesting because we have water here as well. And water lantern has to do with letting go. So because it relates to cultures where you put the water lantern on the water and like you release something, you let something go. So maybe you are um, letting self care go. I think it could be that maybe you are not going to be so focused in the future upon self care, which is kind of paradoxical, right? But like I think it has to do with this non-egoic state of mind and this divine perspective on things, this non-egoic way of looking at the world. So not looking at the world through self, through persona, so it could be that in the future you're going to be letting go of self-care. So if you have been nurturing yourself, caring for yourself, investing into in yourself and in your business, it could be that very soon you're going to be letting that go. So you may be becoming much more focused on other people, on being perhaps generous, much more focused on the outside world. I think so. Something is going to change, and yeah, what could this be? There's something interesting. Maybe it has to do with this dark feminine, because this is a little bit that kind of energy, right? Like where you are generous, but you are generous with an ulterior motive. That's what this is, right? So I do think that you are releasing this consideration. So, for example, um, yeah, yeah. So for me, for example, and maybe this pertains to you somehow, this has to do with me, like I wanted to like for example, perhaps like I was just thinking about it, perhaps like but I also released it at the same time, like this idea about like perhaps like going and doing volunteer work, but I was thinking about that I don't want to um, because it had to do with like being able to be your loving self, right? And not really having the opportunity to be your loving self, which is kind of sad. And I was looking to create those opportunities myself because it's not really coming into my existence. And to perhaps like go and create those moments where you can actually like be express your loving self pretty much. That there are opportunities for you to be able to do that, because I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but if like there are like a lot of dark and toxic like if there is a very oppressive, if you are in a very oppressive environment, you constantly pretty much constantly have to protect yourself, right? So you can't really at one point you won't be able to have the opportunity to even be yourself ever, right? To ever express that, or almost never express that. And it's kind of a shame, right? So I was thinking about maybe creating those opportunities, but I didn't want to be uh, like this figure, right? So I didn't like I've been for me the dark mother figure, right? The dark uh, feminine archetype has to do with this, exactly this, right? This ulterior motive kind of generosity, right? And I don't want to be like that, right? So, and for me, like if I were to go and do volunteer work, it's kind of like you wouldn't have done that. So in a sense, it may be an incredibly pure ulterior motive, right? Because you like, to me, like it has to do with, it's not that there is an ulterior motive to doing the volunteer work, but I wouldn't have normally done the volunteer work if my environment wouldn't have been so dark and so um, not allowing me to have the opportunity to actually ever be myself, to be my loving self, right? Which is kind of a shame, and you start losing that part of yourself, not because you lose it, but because you never have the opportunity to express it, because you always have to protect yourself, right? And so, which you can have if you're like in a really, really oppressive situation, like pretty much all the time, right? So, and but I don't want this, right? I don't want this to be in any kind of way, even very, very farly removed, resembling this dark generosity, right? Where you where you are generous to someone, but it's fake generosity, right? It is like just like my neighbor, right? Like back in the day, who our neighbor at our parents' house would bring vegetables. So you would say like, "Oh, that's so nice of you. You brought vegetables." But it was actually to get the latest gossip, right? And it was also sometimes quite mean, this lady as well. So, and other times she was really kind. So apparently, maybe it has something to do with how much gossip she got. I don't know. But anyway, so there was something very like dark generosity is connected to that, right? So, and even if it's like extremely far removed from that whole concept, I, I most definitely didn't want to go and do volunteer work, even if it's just because you can then express your loving nature. That in and of itself is maybe an incredibly pure ulterior motive, but it is still an ulterior motive. So I was like, nah, don't want that because of this, right? So, like for example, my mother would like for example, like give things to like give workers like some pastry or whatever, like some coffee, but then it was only to get something out of them, right? So, or like even like if you give food, like food being a means to, it's not coming from a great place. Let's just say it like that, right? So, yeah, so this has to do with this whole concept of like fake generosity, and I really dislike that whole concept, right? So everyone like has a past, and like as a result of that, also creates a counter reaction to that past, right? Like I don't want that, not even close, not even in the farthest removed kind of sense. So so that's what this maybe could talk about for you as well in some kind of way. So but most definitely you are releasing that, you are releasing that whole concept of dark generosity, of generosity with ulterior motives. You are releasing it, you're letting it go on the water, and as a result you can now, you can, there is this opportunity now for you to share generously of yourself, right? To not like, and also I was thinking about that, like always having to protect yourself, and as a result, like even like a certain, like taking care of yourself and these kinds of things becomes something that you have to do because you really don't have any other choice, right? So even that becomes a reaction, like uh like if things are like so toxic, so oppressive, right? At one point, you will have to learn to take care of yourself. You will have to learn to protect yourself and to actually focus on yourself because you can't really, like it's out of pure protection, right? Literally, it's out of pure protection that you will at one point have to focus on yourself, but it's not really who you are. So I was contemplating that it's not really who you are to be so self-focused, right? But because you are in such an oppressive environment, you at one point will have to self-focus. So for example, if you if you're always like, for example, if you are by nature someone who would like to generously cook for another human being, but you always get criticism because you are generously cooking for another human being, at one point you learn, because it's so painful to constantly face that criticism, you then start to cook for yourself. And you start to do that with a lot of things, right? You start taking care of yourself, you are starting to become self-focused, but the only reason why you are self-focused is because you, there was no opportunity for you to not be self-focused. I just say it like that, right? It's a protection mechanism. So it is something that you have no other choice because it's too painful to focus, to not do that, right? It's too oppressive, too toxic, too painful, too abusive, right? To do anything other than that. And it is kind of like a reaction to a situation, right? So this could be you taking back, like you starting to realize this and starting to take back your power and saying, I can express myself loose from this situation because I am not this person, right? I can distance myself from that and express myself loose from that in a sense, like not in reaction to that. And also that you no longer, because yes, it was oppressive, but now you can say like, okay, but I would like to be someone who can actually, I don't like to be so self-focused. So you can like let that go and start focusing on other people in environments where you can actually do that safely without having to get seriously hurt by doing that, right? So I'm wishing you a very, very beautiful day ahead, and I hope this was very helpful to you. Bye.